This is the finale of Prisoners of Geography. In Part 1, we stood on the vast plains of Ukraine. Now, in Part 20, we are looking far beyond them. 19 stories have brought us to one ultimate question. If geography is destiny, can we rewrite it? Wait, don't click away just yet. Stay with me, because today, we are going to answer that question head on. Let me be completely honest. Throughout this entire series, I've argued that geography dictates history, that maps write our destiny, that mountain ranges divide civilizations, straits determine hegemony, and borders guarantee conflict. And you might have found yourself thinking, are we just powerless? Then, if the land we're born on dictates everything, does human agency even matter? It's a fair question, a crucial one. So today, after summarizing the sheer power of geography, we are going to talk about the people who defied it. Let's start with the evidence that geography is destiny. Look at Africa. In Part 3, we discussed the curse of straight borders. It's been 140 years since those lines were drawn. Unimaginable amounts of foreign aid and goodwill have been poured in. Yet, the conflicts persist. The poverty endures. Why? Because the borders haven't changed. The terrain hasn't changed. The physical structure upon which those nations were built hasn't changed. Look at the Middle East. The lines drawn by the Sykes-Picot Agreement after World War are still there, and the nations forged by those lines are still bleeding over them. A century later, look at Russia. The warm water port that Tsars obsessed over was the exact same port the Soviet general secretaries coveted, and it's the exact same port the Russian president is fighting for today. The leaders changed 3 times. The ideology changed 3 times, but the geopolitical compass still points the exact same way, south and west. The land moves the people, the terrain moves the nation. This pattern is so overwhelmingly powerful, so relentlessly repetitive, that it spawned an entire academic theory, geographic determinism, the idea that geography dictates absolutely everything. But I am not a geographic determinist, because there are exceptions, magnificent exceptions. Look at Singapore. Its entire landmass is smaller than New York City, a tiny island clinging to the tip of the Malay Peninsula. Power and natural resources, barely any land, no freshwater. They literally imported from Malaysia. In 1965, they were essentially kicked out of Malaysia and forced into independence. Their founding Prime Minister, Lee Kuan Yew, wept on national television. He didn't know if they would survive. Today, Singapore's GDP per capita is among the highest on the planet, higher than the United States. A tiny, resource-starved island survived amid regional giants to become one of the wealthiest nations on Earth. How? Institutions, education, strategy, human choice. Lee Kuan Yew paved over the weaknesses of geography with the strength of institutions. He ruthlessly eradicated corruption. He invested obsessively in education. He crafted a masterclass in diplomatic hedging, refusing to become entirely reliant on any single superpower. Geography dealt them a terrible hand, but they played a flawless game. Geography is a condition. It is not destiny. Here's another exception. The Netherlands. A third of Dutch land is below sea level. By all rights of nature, it should be at the bottom of the ocean. But the Dutch stole that land back from the sea. For centuries, they built dikes, pumped water with windmills, and reclaimed the earth. They literally created land where there was none. They didn't just overcome geography, they terraformed it, and in doing so, they developed the most advanced water management technology in the world, technology they now export globally. In Part 12, I said water is the seed of the next global war. Well, the Netherlands is positioned perfectly for it. Their greatest geographical disadvantage birthed their greatest technological supremacy. It's a beautiful irony. Remember South Korea from Part 9. No natural resources. A vulnerable peninsula, sandwiched between hostile superpowers. Yet, that very Crucible forged them. Semiconductors, K-pop, the miracle on the Han River. Those are the dividends of that geopolitical trial by fire. Singapore, the Netherlands, South Korea, none of them accepted geography as fate. They accepted it as a baseline condition, and upon it, they made choices. But here, we have to confront An uncomfortable truth. Yes, Singapore succeeded. Yes, the Netherlands conquered the sea. Yes, South Korea engineered a miracle. But is that possible for every nation? No. Look at the Sahel region in Africa. The desert is devouring the land. Farming is becoming impossible. Water is vanishing. Climate change is accelerating. Can the people born there just pull as Singapore? The conditions are incomparably worse. Look at Bangladesh. Sea levels are rising. Their homeland is slowly slipping underwater. Do the people born there have the capital and technology to build dikes like the Dutch? They don't. Geography is a condition. That is true, but the disparity in those conditions is staggering. Depending purely on where you are born, the starting line is drawn in wildly different places. That fundamental inequality is the deepest injustice geography inflicts, which brings us back to climate change. It kept coming up in the Arctic Part 8, Food Part 11, and Water Part 12. Climate change is actively rewriting geography as oceans rise. Island nations disappear. Tuvalu, Kiribati in the Pacific. These countries are on the verge of being literally erased from the map. The physical land is vanishing. Where do their people go? Who takes them in? Does international law protect citizens of a state that no longer exists? Nobody knows. There is no precedent. As deserts expand, hundreds of millions will find their homes uninhabitable. They will move. They become climate refugees. And they will cross borders. We saw in Part 14 how immigration shook the EU to its core. Imagine that multiplied by 10. When geography shifts, geopolitics shatters. Climate change isn't an environmental issue. It is a force that redraws the map. And on that newly drawn map, a terrifying new competition for supremacy will begin. Let's talk about the digital realm. In Part 10, I mentioned that the internet is growing borders, the SBL internet. But the original dream of the internet was different. It was envisioned as a borderless expanse, a place where anyone could connect. Information flowed freely, and physical geography ceased to matter. That dream hasn't entirely failed. Right now, a farmer in Kenya checks weather data on a smartphone. A student in Bangladesh learns to code on YouTube. The brutal reality of the Ukrainian frontline is broadcast globally in real time. There are moments when geography completely fails to stop the flow of information. Those moments matter. When knowledge spreads, the gap narrows. When information is shared, corruption is exposed. When we connect, empathy grows. The digital world cannot erase the power of geography, but it can certainly dilute it. And what about international institutions? The UN, the WTO, the IMF, the ICC. These organizations represent humanity's collective attempt to transcend geography. The idea is simple: no matter what soil you were born on, we all abide by the same rules. Strong nations cannot simply devour weak ones. War criminals must face justice, regardless of their nationality. How successful has this been? If we're brutally honest, it's a mixed bag. Russia invaded Ukraine. The UN Security Council was paralyzed because Russia holds a veto. The ICC issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. Russia simply ignored it. The grim reality is that international norms often bend to the will of great powers. But does that make these institutions meaningless? The very existence of the norm is profound. When a standard exists, violating it carries a cost. It's flawed, yes, but it is infinitely better than the law of the jungle, and it is something we can strengthen. It is the power of institutions pushing back against the power of geography. Institutions cannot completely defeat the map, but they can leash it. Here is what I truly wanted to convey throughout this entire series. When we watch the news, we obsess over individuals. Putin is evil. Xi Jinping is a threat. Erdogan is cunning. Kim Jong-un is dangerous. Those judgments on Trump, they matter, but they fail to explain why the world operates the way it does. If Putin vanished tomorrow, would Russia fundamentally change? The flat plains to their west would still be there. The structural imperative to secure a warm water port would still exist. If Xi Jinping stepped down, would China alter its course? The first island chain would still choke them. The Malacca dilemma would still haunt them. The collective trauma of the century of humiliation would remain. Leaders change. The map does not. Once you grasp that, the world looks entirely different. You realize that global events are driven less by personal malice and more by structural logic. You have to understand the architecture of the board to find real solutions. To defeat an enemy, you must understand them. And when you realize your true enemy isn't just a person, but a geographic structure, you realize you don't have to fight with wars. You can fight with better design. I open this series by saying, beneath the choices you thought you made, there was always a map. That remains true. The map is always there. But today, I want to add one final piece. You are standing on that map. The map sets the stage, but humanity writes the script. Just as Ukrainians stood barehanded in front of Russian tanks, just as African youth coded some creator to cross arbitrarily drawn borders, just as Singapore conjured a world-class nation out of a barren rock, just as South Korea engineered miracles from the ashes of war, geography is the starting line, not the finish line. The conditions are dealt to us, but the outcome is ours to forge. Now, for the true finale, where does the map end? A physical map has no end. The Earth is a sphere. Start anywhere, and you will eventually return. But there is a place where the power of geography ends. It ends the moment people choose something stronger than geography. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. That wall wasn't just concrete. It was the geographic fault line of the Cold War, a scar dividing East and West that had dictated human lives for decades. And people tore it down with their bare hands. Human will demolish the geographic boundary. History proved that such moments are possible. The creation of the European Union is the same story. Nations that had slaughtered each other for centuries collectively decided never again. The geography remained identical, but their choice changed. It's not perfect. We saw the cracks in Part 14. But that choice has largely prevented war on European soil for 70 years. Geography didn't do that. Choice did. The world stands at a crossroads. One path submits to the logic of geography. Great powers dominating the weak. Wars fought over resources. Higher walls. A fractured internet. Rejected climate refuges. And the proliferation of nuclear weapons. History has already shown us exactly where that path leads. But there is another path. A path that acknowledges our geographic realities, yet chooses differently anyway, forging treaties to share water, tackling climate change collectively, restructuring trade to empower developing nations, cooperating to reduce nuclear arsenals. We know which path is easier. Yielding to geographic instinct is easy. It's primal. We've done it for millennia. We also know which path is right, but the right path is rarely the easy one, making those grueling, difficult choices. That is the definition of human progress. It is agonizingly slow, deeply flawed, and often takes steps backward, but it is progress nonetheless. Where exactly we stand on that arc of progress, I honestly don't know, but I want to find out, and I want to push us toward it. That is why I made this series. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for joining me from Part 1 to Part 20. We learned how to read the map together. If the global news looks even slightly different to you now, then this series was a success. If you can now see the terrain behind the headlines, the structure behind the leaders, and the map behind the events, when the way you understand the world changes, your attitude toward it changes. When your attitude changes, your choices change. And when choices change, history changes. It all starts with a single map. The map you unfolded today. One last request before we go. If you found value in this journey, please hit that subscribe button. Leave a like. These aren't just vanity metrics. They are the engine that allows me to create deep, exhaustive content like this. They are the reason this channel exists. And if you know anyone curious about how the world actually works, share this series with them. Watch it from Part 1 to 20, or jump to whatever sparks your interest. Every episode stands alone. And stay tuned, Tim Marshall's Prisoners of Geography was just the beginning. Next, I'll be bringing you the voices of other visionary authors, minds that read the world differently, thinkers who pierced through their eras, will rewrite their philosophies in the language of today, applying them to the events happening right now. If we view today's breaking news through the lens of Yuval Noah Harari's History of Humankind, what story does it tell? Do Jared Diamond's prerequisites for civilization still hold up in the 21st century age of AI? Is the grammar of world order that Henry Kissinger wrestled with his entire life still valid at this very second? Those are the stories waiting for you. I'll see you in the next series. Let's unfold the map, read the world, and upon it, write a story of our own. Thank you